Welcome to Wind, Reel, and Print. My name's Ryan.
And my name is Kevin.
And today we are diving into the 80s, and I guess 1990 was when the second one came out, but into a cult classic, and maybe it's just a classic in general.
Yeah.
Gremlins, and by association, Gremlins 2.
Yep.
Is it called the New Batch?
Yep.
If I understand correctly, neither of us had seen this before. Or had you seen Gremlins before?
I haven't seen either of these.
Yeah, neither had I.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had never seen Gremlins at all.
Really?
It totally missed my radar,
I
which
thought
is interesting.
this was like a childhood movie for you.
No, for a lot of people it is. But
Yeah.
I also think it's like for a lot of people, I was born in 92. I think it was a little earlier that Gremlins was a little bigger, because I checked in with a lot of my friends from high school that I'm still really close with that are born around the same time. They also have never seen Gremlins.
Okay.
So it was just it's just kind of a blind spot.
Yeah. I think I knew about it, but like obviously never seen it.
Exactly. Like I feel like if we're talking about Steven Spielberg produced, and in this instance that I'm about to mention, directed, like E.T.
Yeah.
is more my...
Yeah.
I remember that how much that movie affected me.
Yeah. When was that?
That is a good... I'm going to say 91. What do we got? Or was it in the 80s?
82.
No way.
Isn't that crazy? Because I remember that movie a lot, too.
Whoa.
Like watching that movie.
Interesting. I wonder why I saw that and not Gremlins.
Yeah. Like what... I mean, I think this is more
it is.
E.T. is more classically like a kid's movie.
Yeah.
I think, and Gremlins, it's like its own little weird thing.
Yeah, and I think maybe E.T. probably, if it came out that early, it probably set up all of these things.
Yeah. For sure.
Wow, interesting.
I mean,
and Gremlins came out before, or not Gremlins. The Goonies came out before E.T. Right?
Okay.
Or did it come out after?
Oh, I don't know.
That is another one that I think definitely influenced. I mean, we're talking about the Steven Spielberg effect here. Oh, that's 85. Wow, so E.T. definitely created...
It's early.
Yeah, whoa, we just stumbled on something we were not planning to talk about right out the gate. But, yeah, so...
Well, I mean, yeah. I think that's a big part of my interpretation of the Gremlins.
Yeah.
At least the first one is like Steven Spielberg and Chris Columbus, their involvement in this. And, like, I can see how much they... kind of put into this film.
What else has Chris Columbus done?
Harry Potter 1 and 2.
Oh, okay. Home Alone 2. Okay. Yeah. Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there is this warmness, I guess, that comes with these films. And I think it was a mark of quality for so long to have produced by Steven Spielberg. It was a mark that, like, this is a movie.
Yeah.
Like, this is like a one that you go to the theater and you will, for one, get your money's worth.
Yeah.
Which we think about so much more nowadays.
Right.
But it was just a mark of quality, right?
Yeah. And I've definitely got it more in... I mean, they're both great, but I feel like Gremlins felt more on brand with the Spielberg vibes.
Yes.
Like, it felt like Jaws...
Yeah.
This family horror movie.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I was like, there were moments in Gremlins where I was like afraid. Like,
yeah.
Kind of spooked in ways that I was like, oh.
Oh, the scene in the kitchen where she is, like, how graphic and bloody it is. Too.
Yeah.
Like, her killing that, like, they
it's
go
crazy.
there. Like, putting him in the blender whatever. Oh my God.
So
it was insane.
Yeah.
Was really not expecting that. Yeah. So, okay. So the first Gremlins.
Yeah.
Like you, was really kind of blown away by its... I mean, I was blown away by its quality, for one. Of just, like, how seriously it took itself, and it didn't feel cheap either. I also just love practical effects, and so that was another aspect where I'm like, oh my God, this is so...
It's so raw,
So raw, so real.
Yeah. The blood.
Yeah.
Like that green blood thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it had that sentimentality, that small town. You haven't seen Back to the Future, but that town is the Back to the Future town.
Oh, wow.
So I watched it. I'm like, oh my God, this is the exact same set.
Yeah.
And so there was that aspect of it too. Like, this is, there's the small town that the movies of this era were recreating.
Yeah,
and it's a classic like 50s small town.
Yeah, I was gonna say like
brought
Americana.
into the 80s. Yes,
Yeah.
it's this classic Americana thing. And is there anything what stuck out to you?
Yeah, it just felt because like it just felt like Jaws and Home Alone combined like genres into one movie, and like or they reference it. What's that movie? The with James Stewart. The Christmas movie.
Oh, A Wonderful Life.
A Wonderful Life. They show that film.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. They show that in this movie.
Yes.
They show all these monster
because it's
movies.
a Christmas movie too.
Yeah,
like it has that. It takes place during Christmas time.
Yeah. So it felt like It's a Wonderful Life combined with like 50s monster movies.
Yeah,
like as a movie.
An amazing premise.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
great textures like combining together and. It like remained wholesome and scary at the same time, which is to me the most Spielbergian thing like ever, right? Is like that sentimentality mixed with this kind of like terrifying thing.
Yeah, E.T. is another good one. I mean, that movie scared
Close
me
Encounters.
so much. Close Encounters,
yeah. E.T. is spooky. Yeah,
it really is.
Like when he's in the house and stuff.
Oh,
like,
I still remember that. That kind of, you can see what my vines are hanging on. I forget. Like a trellis sort of thing.
Yeah.
There was that part in E.T. There's a trellis kind of near the back. There's that the shed in the backyard. Where he hears the sound. It still haunts me to this day. So scary.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, Gremlins does it so well, and then Gremlins 2 comes around, and it has no business being as good as it is.
Yeah,
to me, Gremlins 2, I think in the end, I'm going to like Gremlins 2 more than I like Gremlins 1. And I think it decided to go there. Yeah. Is the best way to put it. Like, where there were rails to the first Gremlins, and you could say it's like classically good too. Like, it follows all the beats in a very Spielbergian way. Yeah. And then Gremlins 2 just comes in and just goes crazy. Like, there are parts of it that I think are just a little too goofy. Like, it definitely is too goofy at times, for my taste.
Okay.
But
like what?
Specifically, I have a perfect example for that. But
I was like I didn't realize there was too goofy.
It was just at the beginning, because the Gremlins are inherently goofy, and that's okay. Right. But it was how the office building was so glitchy right out the gate. Like, that would have been funny. Like, those goofs could have been funnier if the Gremlins were causing it, but literally the spinning revolving door is just going wild right as they get to the building for the first time.
To me, that was expanding on the inventor character in the first one. Like how all his inventions don't work. Yeah. Like this whole building is predicated on that kind of idea.
Yeah. So I do understand it. It did feel like they were trying to play up like a CEO that kind of like was like a big, I don't know. It was, and it feels insane to be like, oh, that didn't seem believable or whatever. That seems insane for me more and more to say about. Exactly. Gremlins 2, the new batch. Oh, this isn't believable. No, like.
But I mean, there's a level of verisimilitude that.
I guess that's probably the way to put it. Because I just hate saying that about movies in general. It's like, oh, that's not. It's like movies don't have to be believable, but there is like an aspect of like.
Does it exist in that world?
Yeah. Did it bump me? Like, there's always something to be said when it's like, oh, why am I thinking more about this than I am about something else? Like, it doesn't fit into the wave of the story, I guess.
It's not immersive.
Yeah, maybe that's what but so it would have been nice like for me, like if it kind of built up to that aspect of it. Sure. But I also don't care about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing about this film was that it just goes. Yeah. It just jumps into it. It doesn't build up to anything. It just kind of like, oh, okay, now we're doing it.
And it takes the first movie and then pluses almost everything. We have more Gremlins. They look all even more unique and interesting and different. Meta. Yeah, it's way more meta. Yeah. Acknowledging Warner Brothers coming out of the screen and doing the
Joe Dante's in it. Like the show Joe Dante. Yeah. Kill him or something.
Yeah, it is it's so cool, and I just love how big it gets. And they just go so wild with so many gremlins. It's so awesome.
It's great.
I never thought I would like this kind of gremlin character. Like, I always knew it through pop culture, but there was something so great, and it's so classic movie to have like these rules too.
Right.
And it's just, it sets it up so well in the first one of like, all right, these are the rules and you don't want to break them.
Right.
And that's is that called Chekhov's gun, or is that, I know Alfred Hitchcock had the thing where he was basically like, if you put a gun on the wall or whatever, you have to use it.
Yeah.
And that's just classic cinematic technique. And that is Chekhov's gun? Is that what it's called? Yeah. It felt like that. I mean, it's like the movie just it didn't waste any time. I mean, I'm talking about the first Gremlins now. I'm jumping in between, but just the Gremlin series is just so good about that, and then building off of those. And then the second Gremlins just goes
to
buck wild.
Level. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I guess we can talk about this now. Like, let's see. I felt like the first Gremlins was like this nature versus nurture kind of messaging. Like, very, I guess, sentimental or whatever.
Yeah.
In a way. And I feel like the second Gremlins becomes more like contemporary.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like it's addressing things that are happening now. Specifically with like its commentary on media and control, and like how they present it as like evil and sinister. Mm-hmm. And like that to me it feels like Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah.
Like, similar kind of message.
Yeah.
In there.
Talking about the second one? Second Gremlins?
Second Gremlins, yeah. And then I think it's interesting. I looked up Joe Dante's kind of, because he also directed Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Yeah.
Which is also this like meta kind of
same
thing.
company.
Yeah, same company too.
Which is funny.
But he in 1968 he did kind of like a compilation film called The Movie Orgy, where he took like clips of like commercials and like all these different films and like made a thing from that. So like this idea of a meta movie is something that he keeps kind of returning to, and I guess I don't have a conclusion to this statement.
Yeah, okay.
But I think it's maybe something to look into, or like maybe something to scratch at in terms of Joe Dante as a director. Like, what does he see with this meta thing? Like it, or how he applies the meta context as social commentary. Yeah. In a way, like specifically with industry and like individualism, like these characters kind of like battling against that, like, Hollywood or corporations or whatever. Yeah. Like, even thinking to Looney Tunes, like at a certain point they have to like go petition against the like CEOs of Warner Brothers or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's a interesting thing, or just the effect of that on kids shows now, like Wreck-It Ralph, Lego Movie, Across the Spider-Verse, Ready Player One, like Free Guy. Like, there's a lot of these kind of metaverse films that to me feel inspired by Joe Dante's stuff. Yeah. And like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be curious where Joe Dante, we don't have the answer to the theory, but that is, I'd be curious where the history of like really using meta as like a storytelling device, how early that comes in, but it definitely feels like Joe Dante has a hold on it and understands the usefulness of it. Right. We love meta movies here, folks. Yeah. That's definitely.
I mean, it's so pointed, right? Like, because you can make a meta movie that has no reason. To be meta and just it being fun. Like Ready Player One to me is that. Like, it's just meta for meta.
Do you like Ready Player One?
I love Ready Player One. I love Ready Player One. Like, I'll watch that for fun because it's great. I don't know. There's something about it that is just fun. Yeah.
It's got that Spielberg glow to it.
I have a weird. Just like I remember watching it and just feeling a sort of way, I guess. The adventure of it and the limitless of imagination, I guess. In Francis Ha, there's a Gremlins 3 joke So that's my relationship.
Oh my God.
With this movie is like, I mean, and I remember reading about the kind of cultural significance of Gremlins and Gremlins 2 and how like, I don't know, just like how different these two movies are and how good they both are, but for different reasons. And like, how, I guess sequels aren't like that, you know, like they normally don't have lives of their own in their, you know, and to be directed by the same director too, I think is interesting as well.
Yeah. And it should also be noted, like Joe Dante was not the first choice to direct the sequel. They just couldn't crack it.
Wow.
And so they eventually went back to Joe Dante and were like, you know what? We need you. And oh my gosh.
Wow.
Who did the special effects were done by...
Holla or something. Oh, fuck. I have it in
Yeah, Chris Wallace?
Yeah. Or no.
Or Wallace?
Yeah, Wallace. Yeah.
But I think his stipulation for to do the second one was that he needed to, because Joe Dante didn't want to make a second. These are the things that I've read. Didn't want to make a second Gremlins because the Gremlins were hard to work with.
Okay.
Like from just a production standpoint,
sure,
very difficult. But ended up coming back, and then Chris Wallace wanted to come back if he could go basically all out,
sure,
and make different kinds and do more unique things.
Yeah.
Because in the first one, they're all pretty generic
Standard.
and the same.
Yeah.
While this one, you get a spider gremlin, you get a gargoyle gremlin, you get a talking gremlin, you get an electric gremlin. I mean, it's so cool. And there was just something so cool about that gremlin that spoke English and was like intelligent.
Yeah.
There's just something so, and just like standing in like the hall of this entire skyscraper with all of these gremlins, there was just something so cool about it. And it did capture like the New York of like the 80s in a really cool way. And obviously I think Donald Trump was an inspiration for the
character.
For the other character, for like the CEO type guy.
That makes a lot of sense.
Which makes sense. I mean, he was probably the inspiration for everyone of that time.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of Trump.
He's such a character.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just an interesting look into kind of and how that influenced how this movie came about. Like it was very much like a kind of go crazy from the get-go kind of movie.
It does feel like one of those, like a introducing the internet kind of mentality, I would say. Yeah. Like it's kind of I guess, how would you describe this? Like I don't know if it's quite internet boom yet, but there was that kind of like expansion of society, right? Like more urbanization or whatever. Like at the end of the 80s into the 90s, I want to say. And maybe computers were being introduced around that time. I don't know exactly the timeline. But I feel like maybe this is like scratching that itch of like the kind of blowing up of the culture or the world, in a way.
Yeah, there's something, the anarchy that the Gremlins in the second one specifically bring is kind of liberating in a way. Like it is much more like a let's take over, let's start over sort of thing, where like the Gremlins of the first one are just kind of like causing havoc and chaos.
Yeah.
So there's that really cool scene of them in the theater. Like that is a very interesting... was it the first Gremlins where which one do the literal gremlins escape into the movie theater?
Oh, that was the first one.
That was the first one?
Yeah, and they blow up the theater.
Yeah. Well, but is that where like literally the movie goes full meta and we're like we're in the theater where people are watching it?
Oh, that was the second one.
That was the second one. Okay.
The second one is like more...
The second one goes meta and all, like it really breaks all the walls.
Like, yeah, that's where I feel like first Gremlins is like a classic monster movie.
Yeah.
That has meta qualities to it. But the Gremlins 2 is like more forcefully meta. And like in a funny games way where it's like involving you in that. Mm-hmm. And I think the Gremlins start attacking the film itself. I think that's like kind of what is message or what the action is or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that like they start to kill the director, they kill the audience, they like start to attack the meta texture of the film. And then in that clip with Quentin Tarantino, he talks about the book and how the book does like a similar thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just something you just don't like. What a unique and interesting thing that Gremlins has the capability to do. There was also this
it's
really
like, well, sorry.
No.
It's like on the tip of my tongue. Like to relate it to funny games, the Gremlins are like nihilists.
Yeah.
It's a representation of like the 90s nihilism in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Gremlins feels like it has the ability to be able to comment on things and to do things that no one else can do.
Right.
I think we have like Deadpool now fits into that different, and
it's like irreverence and
exactly. Yeah. And that there's something to that. And I was watching Red Letter Media. It's a really great YouTube channel that goes into a lot of these movies. And I watched their kind of conversation about Gremlins 2. And they had always talked about Gremlins 3 as like taking place, like a really great idea would be if it took place in the White House. Like that's kind of like the next logical step they could go. And you could imagine it being like, if done well, it could be really well done.
Yeah.
But
especially today.
Oh, totally. Yeah. You could easily, make that one like become the president. Oh my God. It would be the commentary would be just absolutely delicious.
It's right there.
Yeah. But knowing just the way things, I mean, it's amazing that another Gremlins movie hasn't been made since. The second one was a box office bomb, which is hilarious, but has obviously gained a cult following since. And so they did make an animated Gremlins show. I think season 2 is coming out soon or something like that. Wow. So there is like an aspect of it, but but it feels like Gremlins just in general kind of like drifted off into the kind of the ether, a little bit, and has kind of been forgotten. And it was always on like the back burner for me. It's like I gotta find a reason to see that. So I'm happy we gotta watch it because I really really liked it. Yeah. Insane. Love you, Gizmo.
Yeah.
Something to comment on before we end this as well is I think there's something interesting to think about the like Chinatown and Chinese culture, because that does play a big part in the opening of both. Because even the second one has like Chinatown being torn down as well. And Chinatown representing basically the entrance into the magical realm.
Right. So to speak.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that? I know that like we're going to talk in a future episode about Big Trouble in Little China. And we also watched the documentary Hollywood Chinese. Yeah. Which I think goes into this. But I think that's something that you can't really forget about what that plays into it. And maybe it was done well enough that it didn't feel so like they were like losers in the story, I guess. Might be the like how derogatory was it, I guess is a better way to put it.
I felt like, I guess now that we're talking about it, I could see how the second one is about like corporate gentrification, or that at least the opening intro, right?
That's what it feels like to me too.
It's like, because that happened to Filipinos in San Francisco. Yeah. But then I feel like the first one, you could interpret it as derogatory. Yeah. I think like there's an interpretation there of like the mystical exoticism of Chinatown and just the Chinese in general. Yeah. And the way they dress them and all the like magical powers and all that kind of stuff. But I think they do, I don't know, maybe this is cheap, but I think they clean it up in a nice way at the end with like him coming back and taking and like ushering this message. Because to me, like I don't know if that like, okay, I think you could look at this film as like a xenophobic like COVID allegory, where the Gremlins are like, I mean, you could even say the Gremlins are a representation of xenophobia. Yeah. You know, this like idea that can warp into something malicious if you like if you feed the negative side and let it go too far, right? I'm here all night.
You could apply that to a lot of things. That is very interesting. Yeah, you check off a couple boxes, you do something a little off.
Yeah, and it goes off crazy.
And it warps.
Yeah. Right. And then I guess you could say that's like virality, like the viral kind of culture in Gremlins too. Like that kind of same like idea applies.
Yeah.
But I feel like, what was I gonna say? My interpretation of it was like, my interpretation of the film was that it's about responsibility and that you need to be conscious and aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And like how, like the butterfly effect, like things can
it's such a great movie for kids.
Yeah.
In that way.
Get out of hand and stuff. It reminded me a lot of Cat in the Hat in that sense. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you and Cat in the Hat. I forget there's something there.
We're gonna get there.
We always stumble into these weird Kevinisms, and Cat in the Hat's one of them.
I love that movie.
It's like, whoa, why are we stopped here? Why is the ride stopped here? What happened? But that's funny.
I feel like this brings me back to another point that I wanted to say earlier. Was Noah Baumbach talks about how he doesn't separate, the Julie Jims from the Gremlins 2. Like these sorts of films can exist in one plane as like quote unquote cinema,
Yeah.
And I love just being able to reference like Casablanca and then Cat in the Hat.
Yeah. I think that's the nature of this podcast too. Is like we're reaching everywhere.
Yeah.
We're grabbing big handfuls.
Yeah.
In the history of film.
We're sweeping the seafloor.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's get the freaks in here.
Yeah, yeah. And we got the freakiest.
We got some real serious freaks with Gremlins.
Yeah. Also just wanted a small like tying into other things that we have. Hoyt Axton's character, the dad in the first movie, he reminded me of Orson Welles, like the kind of posturing and like inventory kind of presentory kind of vibe. And then they also mentioned like the World of Wars broadcast.
War of the Worlds?
Yeah, War of the Worlds broadcast in Gremlins 1 on the radio. So yeah, just thought that was an interesting callback to a previous episode.
Also, before we wrap it up, I realized I made a mistake, and I'm correcting it on the record before we leave. The creature designs of Gremlins 2 is actually done by Rick Baker, who is like a very classic monster movie.
He came up in a previous episode.
Yeah, and his stipulation was that he wanted to make more interesting Gremlins.
Okay.
So it wasn't the same guy, but you can
still
see,
makes sense, yeah.
Still follows that same thing, but yeah, it was Rick Baker, who's very famous.
Ricky Baker. Yeah.
Oh man, that was terrible. We should leave now. All right, folks.
Going for New Zealand.
Oh, you're going for New. I was kind of going Cockney.
Yeah, that was definitely UK.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely UK. All right, folks. That's a wrap. Wind Reel and Print is a podcast by Salad Brain Productions. You can find us online on Instagram at Wind Reel and Print Pod. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you like the show, leave a rating and review. We'll see you next time.